Well, something that is not getting enough attention is the persecution of Christians around the globe, but most definitely in Nigeria. Those of us who have looked in on this have witnessed some of the most heartbreaking scenes you can possibly imagine. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like you are boned up on the news of Nigeria. And look, I'm not the Nigeria expert either. So if we want to go to foreign soil and find out exactly what's going on and why why the Trump administration is talking about going in guns blazing, we should probably talk to Francis about it. Joining me now, wonderful, wonderful editor with Breitbart International News, Francis Martel. Francis, I don't know squat about Nigeria. 99.99% of the people watching us right now don't know anything about Nigeria. So go ahead and do a Nigeria 101 for us. What's happening? What's up with this country? What's going on?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. And lucky for you, at Breitbart, we've been covering Christian persecution in Nigeria for at least 12 years. I mean, I think it was my first year there that we started really getting into it. The basics is that in most countries where we talk about persecution of Christians, there's a very small minority of Christians that are persecuted by the state, which is the majority. So in most Islamic countries, for example, or in China, where you have a small secret, or in North Korea, population of Christians. In Nigeria, the breakdown is about 60-40, 60% Muslim, 40% Christian, and the majority of southern Nigeria is Christian. So this is kind of a unique situation. And a lot of the worst persecution happens in a region called the Middle Belt, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's if you cut Nigeria in half, that area where the Muslim North and the Christian South meet, that's where we're seeing the biggest massacres. And there's a systematic displacement campaign that has been going on there for at least 10 years by mostly ethnic Fulani Muslims who are going into villages and communities and essentially exterminating that population, displacing them into camps. And this is separate from a different persecution campaign in the north against the minority of Christians there, mostly by Boko Haram, which we all know from that horrible kidnapping in 2014 that is still not completely resolved. So there's two major insurgencies there, and it is unique because there simply are so many Christians.
Okay, Francis, I have a couple questions that are very stupid questions, but I kind of need clarification on a couple things. First of all, this displacement campaign, the Christians who are in these areas, one, why don't they move? Can they move? And two, why don't they shoot back? 60-40 is not exactly a tiny, tiny minority. Is there no armed force for the Christians to shoot back?
Well, these are actually really intelligent questions. You really undersold them. The first one, why don't they move? The answer is they are moving. We're seeing the population of Christians in the Middle Belt decline significantly, and not all of them are being murdered. A lot of them simply are fleeing. But the ones that don't, for the most part, it's two main reasons. One, they have nowhere to go. They don't have the money to go anywhere. And number two, that's the indigenous population of that area. These are people, and they tend to be smaller ethnic groups. There are three major ethnic groups in Nigeria, the Fulani being one of them. These are smaller groups that have no real pull in the capital with politicians. So they have nowhere to go, and this is their homeland. They refuse to leave. As for are they armed? Well, we had an incident in Plateau State, which is in the center of Nigeria, a few months ago, actually, where the government is so incompetent at protecting these communities that the governor of that state came out and told people, make vigilante militias, like try to get guns wherever you can to protect us because the government's not coming to help. So they are trying to do that, but they're only trying to do that because the government has completely abandoned them.
Okay. That leads me directly into the question of, can we get them guns? We got lots of them. I'm happy to become a smuggler.
Well, we could. It would be something like an Iran-Contra affair type situation.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think I don't know which congressman is going to be the one that stands up and says, what I really want is like a Fast and Furious, but in Nigeria. And we don't know in whose hands those will end up, right? Because these Fulani herdsmen, so the talking point from the government is that we are helpless to stop these Fulani herdsmen because they're herdsmen, they're just, they're also indigenous to the land, which is not true according to the Christians there, and they're roving bandits. You're not even allowed in Nigerian media to identify them as Muslim. They're just unknown gunmen and bandits. And so there's this idea of like disorganization that is not actually what is happening. These are armies. This is something akin to what happened in Sudan, in Darfur, when George Clooney cared about that a million years ago. I'm dating myself bringing that up. But it's very, very organized. And so, yes, you could throw guns out there, but there are armed militias that will probably seize them. And then you have an Afghanistan type situation.
Okay. Now that brings us to the Trump administration. Sometimes Trump will put something out on social media he's very serious about, and sometimes not. How seriously do you think they're taking this? Are we going to get involved? How can we even get involved?
I think he's taking it seriously because he was the first president to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern for religious persecution in his first term in 2020. He put it on the list. So this isn't new for Trump. It just got drowned out in the madness of 2020 that he was actually invested in this. So I do think he wants to make a difference here. The guns a-blazing comment, I don't think he exactly wants to pull like a full-scale, Iraq invasion of Nigeria. I don't think that would be successful. But he's putting the pressure because right now, all of the pressure on the Nigerian government is on behalf of the genocidal Muslim Fulani herdsmen. Those are the people pressuring the government. If there's no pressure on the other side, they're not going to defend the Christians.
All right, Frances, let's switch gears because there's a lot of things going on around the world I want to try to wrap up with you here. Trump met with Xi. There is a pause in hostilities, I guess I should put it that way. Is that how you would characterize it?
I think, or maybe a reprioritizing of which hostilities we're trying to deal with. I thought the most interesting thing about that meeting was that they talked about Ukraine. And the big obstacle in Ukraine right now is that Putin is completely intransigent, right? Like we had this moment, there was going to be a summit in Hungary. Zelensky even said he would be there, and the Russians said no. So now Trump is trying a different tack, I think, and going to Xi Jinping and saying, well, can China do anything for us? Because, you don't want to end up having a super powerful Russia to your north. And I think that was the negotiation that happened. So now the trade talks are less important than what can we do together to stabilize Eastern Europe. And I think that was the shift that happened.
Okay, can you explain why it seems like, at least from the outside looking in, it did seem like on more than one occasion that Putin wanted this thing to wrap up. He made public comments to that effect, and now he doesn't really seem that interested in it. What happened? Did something happen?
Well, Putin is just a master of wasting people's time. That's what he's done for the past 2 decades. That's what he did the first time he invaded Ukraine, which was in 2014 under Obama. That's what he did in Georgia. He basically ran out the clock and took 2 of Georgia's territories under George W. Bush. I think he says exactly the right thing to keep this thing going in the long term. And he needed just enough time to also recalibrate because he was losing a lot of profits from the sanctions, and he has a problem at home. There's a lot of mothers whose soldier sons aren't coming home, and I think he found a solution to that through North Korea and Cuba, and so that's what's keeping the war going.
All right, let's go to Cuba and then keep traveling south to Venezuela here. Is Russia helping them? Why are they helping them? Where is this all going?
Well, the Russians have a very deep relationship with the Cuban Castro regime since the era of the Soviet Union. They're very, very close. And Russia and Venezuela, as a result, have that relationship because Venezuela essentially acts as a proxy of the Cuban regime. They work together in tandem. Venezuela offers free oil to the extent that it can. And Venezuela offers Russia a presence in the Western Hemisphere that is bigger than it's ever had anything before. I think having Russia be able to fly nuclear bombers around Venezuela to threaten us is something that's very valuable. So Russia's going to stand up for them. And the foreign ministry came out and said, we're here if Venezuela says that they need help against the Americans.
Right. Frances, as always, thank you for the education. Come back soon. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.